Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Trying to get it into Wahab. Instead, cross-court pass. Murray with an open lane. Oh, put it on a poster. That is a poster. No question. Great block by Meyer. He just stayed right in that play. Was trailing the whole way. Deja picks it up and throws it down.
There's a Dickinson. Like Miles Dredd made it work because he got underneath him.
Here's Funk for three, and he hits his first from range. And what a time for it. Penn State within three again.
Jackson down the lane. Whoa! Whoa! There's a difference maker. Andre Jackson Jr. Hey now.
That's how I feel every morning. Whoa! Hey now. It's that time I get to work with DB again. No, I actually wake up and snooze my alarm.
Yeah, that's not all. It's not that exciting.
It's Thursday morning on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, and that's something you can actually see tomorrow as we have a live breakfast at Hail Varsity Club. I know we still have spots. I'm sure we can make room even if we don't have spots. So if you're interested,
I don't know.
Where do I direct them? I feel like I should have done more prep on this.
Well,
it is your thing.
It's not my thing. They just use my name. It's our thing.
They used your name and you in the video.
I think it was alliteration, like the whole breakfast with Benning thing. And I had been doing the Benning Bites while you were doing the six-pack.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we're going to do the six-pack together probably once a week.
Yeah, now we get to share it. Now I don't have to get drunk by myself.
Sharing is caring.
Well, I guess Shaner did drink all the beer whenever we did the six-pack together.
Shane will have Big Apple Red Bull. I will have ginger ale.
Yum.
And you will have coffee.
Yes, and I have my coffee right now, which is good.
Well, you can't really do that yet because you can't give away the milk for free. So whomever is going to be your coffee guy, wait until they're like, hey, if you guys are going to be talking coffee and be on video every day, I want that advertising.
You know, I'm going to give a little plug here because they do work with the Chick and Nick show. So it kind of counts. The Beanery. I really like
Team Beanery.
Yeah. I'm a huge Beanery guy.
Do you know what I like about beans? The fact that you can make a decent chili, the fact that you can get some good vanilla, and it's a different kind of vanilla bean. But what else do we like about beans?
I like green beans.
You're so...
And you know what that also applies to?
I like green beans. I do not. Green beans are not on the old menu at the Benning household. Hey, Shane, too early to be getting booted off our own show.
Do you smell what the Rock is cooking?
I do not.
It's another way to describe a sports bet win because all you get are green.
Hey, so instead of Bean, how about Ben? Was
Jamie? Oh gosh. Don't even talk to me about him.
It's okay.
It is okay. Now, okay, so I'll set the stage. Last night, I told DB I came off a really good NHL parlay win. And so I'm like, let's build another one. 3 games.
I'm glad our listening audience is like, oh my gosh, this guy is truly a degenerate.
And you'll find that out sooner rather than later.
He is truly a degenerate.
I parlayed 4 goal scorers, and you're like, how can you do that? There are only 3 games. Well, I did a same game parlay in the Wild Lightning game. Got them both right. I got Kirill right, and I got Braden Point right. I bet on Heishier, and then I parlayed Jamie Benn. And I don't know if anybody else saw it. I did throw out one tweet, which probably got most of our listeners a little confused. Like, why is Andrew interested in this Ducks game right now? And more oftentimes than not, if I'm tweeting about a team that I don't normally tweet about, it's because I have a bet that is, hanging on by a thread, and that right there could tie the knot. Jamie Benn, closing seconds of the second period, Stars go on a power play, gets the pass. It was a shot from the blue line, but directed more as a pass. Easy tip-in. Had a wide open goal.
I don't know about easy.
Easy.
It was open.
Easy for him.
The far corner was open. Do you want him to go a little top shelf?
I wanted him to elevate.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Just elevate the puck a little bit, because Gibson is stretching with his pad. He could only make one save, and that's the save he made.
Oh.
Because when you stretch out your leg like that, coming from a different direction,
low near
you're
post.
still not all the way down to the ice. So you could have gone 5-0 theoretically, but he hit the spot of the pad that's stuck on the ice next to the skate, did not score, and then the Stars got shut out, which I would rather that happen than the Stars score 6 goals and Jamie Benn not get one of them.
I think at first blush, if you'd have asked me the quartet, I'd have maybe felt like Ben was the safest.
For real? Because he was like plus 275 as an anytime goal scorer.
Which should have let you know.
Right. But I'm big into going back to recent games and seeing him heat up.
And they were hot.
And this is a guy that got promoted to the second line. He was a third liner last year, and he's on the first power play unit.
He's a third liner last year. Hey,
I'm all about ice time.
That's that elevate that you were looking for, right?
Yeah.
Moving on up.
That was a killer. And I got to ask you this.
Okay.
Because
feel free.
And we're going to get
By the way, good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you too.
How you doing?
I'm great.
I'm
with you.
Well, you have your coat on, so I'm worried.
No, so I wore a t-shirt today, and I got to get warmed up.
Ease into
it. I didn't want to wear another pullover jacket because I wanted to rep my St. Louis Battlehawks t-shirt that I got for $6.
Old school. Hey, that's Shane. He shops like you. How about that?
That's not bad.
Shane, Shane does not believe in getting t-shirts for more than $3.
You're a clearance rack guy. I'm there.
6 is pushing it.
See, I like the clearance rack.
Shane,
you can find some diamonds in the rough there.
Shane, so even when you go to the Goodwill, are you still in the kids section?
No.
So you go to
getting like a large.
Do you start in the toy section and then go to clothes?
No. Looking for Hot Wheels.
Shane, where'd you get that? Shane, where'd you get that shirt, man? Ken Barbie is now naked.
Yeah.
Wait, Ken Barbie? That's a little. Yeah, exactly.
That vest is that Gucci?
What were you going to ask me? Is it hockey related?
No, actually completely different. And I'll set the lineup here first. We'll talk college basketball upsets here in a few. Later on, we will chat with Brandon Vogel of HailVarsity.com, one of our good friends.
Jelly.
I got teammates here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Air high five.
There is a need in the portal that I still think Nebraska needs to address. We'll get into that. We'll talk NFL playoff picture and the Jim Harbaugh coaching rumors at the top of the hour. We'll also chat with Parker Gabriel, covers the Denver Broncos for the Denver Post at 8:30.
So good to talk to PG again. I need a little guidance. I get it from my man Parker. We may have to get him into the fold. You're going to love him.
Not to be confused with Paul George.
His range is fantastic. I mean, you knew right away when LJS hired him, he was going to be hard to keep. It's very, very gifted, extremely smart. So bringing him back into the fold because they're just certain guys that I enjoy having dialogue with.
Well, you guys were giving him a glowing review about 10 minutes before the show. Like, hey, he's the nicest guy.
He's really good at his job too. There's just guys that I enjoy, that I think I know that, like, whether we talk about tiddlywinks or shooting marbles or jacks or whatever, I think we can get a good conversation. Parker's in that. He's in that
fold.
Sam McEwen, another one, because you can ask Sam anything. It could be
an all-around sports fan.
It could be even degree of difficulty. He can go he can go topical. He could go philosophical. Like,
sure.
Yeah, that. Shane, are you guys going?
I think you're spot on.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
You're right.
Fine. That's fine.
Thank you.
We talked a little sports gambling right off the top, and we'll end with Brian Edwards too.
So it's weird. It all comes full circle. Vegas B. Edwards was a guy that I started with.
He's a guy, oddly enough, I had a buddy that worked at Vegas Insider.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he still does. I think he does a podcast with them still regarding college basketball. And he said he worked closely with a guy named Brian Edwards. And he told me, because my buddy, one of my best friends, knew that I worked with you. He said Brian always talked about you.
Yeah.
Like saying like DB and I were boys. Like this is my guy.
So I went to Vegas. Well, I've been there a couple of times. I went to Vegas and hung out with B. Edwards. We watched UFC together. It was supposed to be John Jones, but unceremoniously, John Jones was removed from the card last minute, not testing so well.
That's okay.
So John Jones was not on the card. We had great food. And Brian
were you at the book? Like,
yeah. So
did you have a reserve table and everything?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I got a good story about that too.
So, the first thing that happened when I pulled up, took a pic. Guess who was getting out of their limo? One John Jones. Took a picture with John Jones.
No way.
Yeah. So I have all those on my phone. So
were you wearing a sweater over a button-up shirt?
No, I was not. Wow, you're gonna stay on that, right? What were you doing in 09? That's what I want to know.
I was in school.
Were you like in English?
I was wearing a uniform.
Were you in like English class?
Well, I didn't. I was maybe in English class, but I wasn't paying attention.
So in like a 30-hour stretch, I was with Karl Anthony Towns and John Jones.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Karl, so NBA, Vegas NBA was just getting started in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back when Karl Anthony Towns was playing in Summer League. Actually, he was a spectator. He
wasn't playing.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So
Brian Edwards does not look anything like he sounds.
Did you feel like a big shot?
No.
Being next to those guys?
No. So he's pretty. Shane, is it conspicuous or inconspicuous?
It's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
He's very unassuming. John Jones was a quickie. That was just
get in, get out.
He's like, he dapped me up. He's like, hey, what's up, my guy? Like, he put me in a mini headlock. He's significantly taller than me. So he's just like, hey. And I was like, I barely know you don't like to be touched, but it's better than being hit or kicked or anything like that. And speaking of the UFC,
destroyed.
Are you surprised? And Shane, our guy Kevin Iole got hammered by our other guy, Steven Muehlheisen, who we used to talk to all the time about MMA and boxing. Boy, he was not happy with Kevin Iole. Called him out about not putting the screws to Dana White.
Really?
Yeah. But should we be judging Dana White more harshly? I don't know.
I feel like
a penguin.
Everybody right now is
Steven Sipple said that
falling into the same trap. Like, what is happening?
So
I feel like a penguin.
Me too. It's cold out. Drew Down, are you a pound of flesh guy? Like, do you need your pound of flesh for reconciliation? Do you or are you kind of just like go along to get along, move along? Like
that'd probably be me.
Go on, yeah. So there's this thing the last 48 hours is now could anybody but Dana White skate if in fact that's what happens? What happened when things like that are caught in public? Could anybody else get away with striking a female in public in such a public
come out
manner
unscathed
and come out basically okay? So
I don't think anybody could.
So I'm trying to think, though, does anybody have as much control over their respective sport as Dana White?
No, I think he stands alone.
Even
on his own
Goodell
pedestal.
has the owners. So commissioners that run sports leagues have the owners, ultimately, that they answer to. Who does Dana White answer to? His
himself.
Board of trustees,
Himself.
Like he's the main kit and caboodle.
Do you think that sense of power resonates with his life too much?
I don't know. I mean, I could see that. I mean, he's not a guy. We talked about this with Kevin the last time when we had Iole on when my guy Usman and the style bender.
Yeah, the criticism that
Dana White renders on his own product.
Right.
And I said, gosh, can anybody else get away with that? And I guess when the buck stops with that guy, he can kind of control it. But he has so many friends in the media that, like even Stephen A., and I say what you want about vouching and credibility or whatever, like even Stephen A., who's pretty good friends with Dana White, like went there and then got off. So it's like they're bringing attention to it, but it's not like nobody's really like going all in. That's of what I would call national. Ooh, did you see what such and such said? It's almost like, and I think people care because it's a popular sport, but you just haven't. I mean, you just haven't heard.
No, I actually heard.
Does it have? Hey, does it have something to do with this? Riddle me this, Batman. The fact that his wife made a public statement so soon.
Yes, I think it does matter.
Okay.
I was going to say I actually think I've heard more about the U.S. men's national team head coach and his physical altercation than I have about Dana White.
Yeah. That's interesting, too. I don't coach. Well, he plays on West Side's football team, and his last name is Reyna, Aiden. So I called him Claudio for a year and a half. I had no idea who Claudio Reyna was. But I just called him Claudio just because everybody gets a nickname. So I even asked all the kickers, like, because I figured the kickers know soccer. So I asked Tristan and
everybody.
And Tristan was a soccer player.
Yeah. And I called Tristan Magnum TA. It's an old wrestler that I used to like. But he had a huge leg, and TA obviously his initial. So I used to call him Magnum TA, and it took him like 3 weeks to ask me. He's like, hey, coach, this was like 2 years ago. He's like, hey, coach, why do you call me Magnum TA? Anyway, I rapidly go down the rabbit hole. But
before I embarrass myself, I would have gone to the internet. Like if I was Tristan, I would have typed in that, and then I would have said, coach, why are you labeling
this guy's
me
from
as a
the
former
80s.
wrestler?
Yeah, this guy's from the 80s who had a very bad vehicle accident. Can you believe that story? That thing dates back to, I mean, you're going back some years. And it's like, Claudio Reyna, I've never threatened anyone. I'm just like, where are we going with this? And meanwhile, Dana White, I don't know. It comes up and it's like, it gets enough attention and then we like move off. And I'm like, could anybody else get away with that?
Because it's always something different. Something else pops up.
I still
that covers it up.
It's because his wife went to bat for him. I really do. And she sounded like, and it was immediate. You know, it's within, 10 hours. And it's like, and I just think with some of these issues that happen where stories come out and we're not sure, I think can I say victim? I think if the one that the act was perpetrated against and we have all these things swirling, like Chris Beard or Coach Joseph or whomever else, like if we hear from the other person, which we ultimately did with Coach Beard,
right?
Does that change the way that we think going forward? Like, do we care enough to look at Dana White the same? Does it really matter? It seems like it does, but he's got such stroke.
It's really hard to sit with, right? Because it's hard to separate your stance. Of course, you're against it.
Correct.
Of course. But whenever you hear things like what you're saying right now, it's like, how do you accept it? Like that's what's hard at the end of the day. Nobody, no matter how much power, no matter how much grip you have on something, should be able to get away with it. But
did the fact that
you're not getting away with it,
the fact that Dana White's statement seems so unpolished,
that doesn't help.
I actually think it did.
You think because it wasn't
there's no publicist. Yeah, there was nobody wrote that or said that other than Dana White. Hey, listen, people are going to say what they say. It's whatever. I deserve it. I absolutely deserve it. Maybe
could come across more genuine that way,
right? So sometimes I like listening to guys that aren't as polished.
Yeah,
right. Because at least I know,
All in all, I think you hit the nail on the head by saying when the other party comes out and says something,
That's probably what it is.
It kind of puts a blanket over the fire, like a fire. Like if you had a fire and you put your fire blanket over it and it starts to, fizzle out.
Because I think what people are afraid to say is what they really saw in the video, right? Because this is the dirty little secret that people don't talk about, because we're in this day and age of political correctness, and there's still a little bit of chivalry. And man, she did whack him pretty good. But nobody is going to say that, because the adage is, I don't care what happens, you never, ever, ever strike a woman, right? So, but believe me, there are people that I think want to talk about that as though, hey, not to let anybody off the hook, but you're like at the water cooler, and you're like, man, did you see how she hauled off and hit him? I wonder because if he doesn't, then you know what we would be talking about? Man, that took some serious constraint. Or something like that, restraint, like that. I don't know.
You also, when you get a video, and this happens all the time, whether you're talking about an incident like this or even something else, you never get the full picture. You always get a piece.
Yeah,
and then you craft your opinion off a piece. I know in this case, like, you got more than just a 15-second piece, but in a lot of cases, I would say over 95% of cases, when you look at something on social media, you are getting 10% of what actually happened.
Yeah. I wonder. So was that the facilities camera, or was somebody filming that? Because I thought it was the facility until it was almost
eye level.
Yeah,
I would say somebody was filming it, because when you get somebody of that stature in your place,
but how do you know? You're not just sitting. That would be like.
No, but
I'm waiting for it to go down.
But you may also just be recording, because it was probably an argument, right? Maybe voices were being raised, and now you're like, Dana White's arguing with his wife. I'm going to get this on video and send it to my friends.
Yeah.
But if it was a regular person in a restaurant, they'd do the same thing.
Right.
And then if you saw a regular person start wailing on somebody else, you'd be like, whoa, TMZ exclusive, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I saw that on Channel 7 last night with what was going on in local area high schools. Everybody's got a phone.
You can't get away with anything.
Yeah.
So think about that before you make your next step.
I agree.
Think about that. Did you see what I texted you yesterday? You never responded. Did you see the Twitter thread that I sent to you?
No.
My favorite morning show in St. Louis.
Oh, yeah. So, you know what I didn't understand, though? So that was the guy that you would always talk about. You're like, oh, yeah, my favorite show. When they get into the show, they don't start by talking sport. That's the guy?
No, not the main guy, not the X Factor, just a member of the show.
Okay.
And for our listeners out there, long story short, he was sending inappropriate messages via Facebook Messenger to a bunch of listeners. And he's been doing it for years, because if you go back on that Twitter page, they're all there.
So he did leave himself multiple outs, though, right? So it's kind of weird, but then not. LOL.
Yeah,
ha, ha, ha.
The show is very
much like that.
Very much tight ropes the FCC line.
Ooh.
And so they do a very good job of
the thing that makes Shane cringe.
Yes.
Shane gets shaky fingers.
Yeah, they do a very good job of, kind of beating the rules, right? And so because there's a little bit of that inappropriate vibe to the show, that's his personality. So he was showing that.
So where's the hub?
In St. Louis. Yeah, it was a part of our sister station when I worked at ESPN there.
So the main reason that I didn't respond immediately is because I went down the rabbit hole
of looking at all of
all the
stuff.
Yeah, and it's hard too when people do it in like fours. You have to make sure like it's corner. You're trying to go in order. It's like, is this one and then this one, or do I go up, down, or do I go over, then down, then over?
You just click a message and it's pretty inappropriate.
That's your
what
guy.
Isn't inappropriate are the upsets that we saw in college basketball. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, back with you live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio. Damon Benning to my left. I'm Andrew Rogers. Shane Schillerberg on the board. Again, you can join us for our breakfast show tomorrow. I did look it up. You do have to reserve a spot. You can pay at the door, though, but you can get tickets prior to. Easier entry. Find your seat. Enjoy the show.
This is where we need to put the headsets on Sasha because she basically knows everything that Shane doesn't. But
well, she's over there like, you know, like
making sure we don't screw up.
Like,
it's so funny too because
she is strangling me from a distance by not knowing the facts of the breakfast show.
Hey, well, is there anything worse than the subtle eye roll?
She does show me that once or twice.
It's like you almost rather be cussed out than have somebody look at. Sometimes our coach would look at me and he'd just be like,
"You do that too, though."
And it's like, well,
like not like all the time. But.
Yeah, but do you know why? Because I know words. Whoever said sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. They're fibbing.
But chains and whips excite me. Oh, different one.
Okay, Tony. So it's like and my dad used to always say, he's like, you know what? Words matter. Choose them carefully. So, which is why a lot of the way that I talk the way that I do, like, like kind of with a broken cadence, or I'm kind of thinking as I'm going. But anyway, I buy myself time by giving those looks. That's why. Yeah, I'm like, because I'm trying to think where the other person is coming from when they either say what they said.
So it's your dramatic pause in life.
Or tweet what they tweet, right? Like during the Buffalo Bills game, I seriously was beside myself. I'm like, how do you have how do you just fire off a tweet without even asking what context it is? And even if you're wrong, like, why go all in? Oh, I can't believe it.
It's defense mode.
I'm like, hey, wait a minute.
That's Twitter.
I'm like, wait a minute. That's not even what I'm saying.
What you were talking about.
Can I finish? Right? Like, I don't care if I know if the game is final. I'd like for those players to know that the game is final, and for the people on set, so we can talk about other things other than I don't know. Mm-hmm. Like, did you see how quick Diggs got to the hospital? Did you see
the time?
But where they showed him pulling up to the hospital?
Well, I didn't see him pulling up, but I saw him walking in.
That's what I saw. Pull up. So the kids use pull up when they mean, hey, pull up, walk up. So
I'm with you.
So he was walking, like the literal
Uber.
But he was. Hey, if you need an Uber, I got a guy. I'll introduce you to him tomorrow.
Yeah, you know what? I told him. I retweeted his tweet. He's coming. I said I can't wait to meet you.
He's careful now. Again, you can't always do crazy. You got to do it in small doses. You got to watch Z.
You hear what he's talking? He's talking to you.
No, he knows.
He embraces it.
Yeah, wait till you see him. He looks like the Macho Man. Like, what are we talking about? Okay. Different is good for Z. He likes it. But anyway, I forgot what I was saying. We're talking top 25 basketball.
I know.
Claude, have mercy. ODB's back.
Hey, we were just hitting the shoulder a little bit, like the part of the road on the highway.
Yeah, so I just wanted the players to be able to clear their mind. Right? Because I said it immediately, too, when they were, like, warming up for the first 5 minutes. I'm like, hey, I'm just telling you guys, CPR is a game changer. Mm-hmm. Right. And this was my favorite.
I told Ashley we're going to take CPR classes after things.
Yeah.
Like this.
So you have to get certified as a coach.
Oh,
Now, I don't remember. I know they taught us
to beat this. What is it? Staying alive.
The how to utilize the AED thing.
Oh, the paddles.
But it's still like
those paddles.
Joe Blow just can't do that.
Is AED paddles, or is it like where you like place the?
I think it's the placing things, right? That's
I don't know.
Dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So good on the first responders, but I said it. I was like, until they know when you know that somebody is fighting for their life, like life or death, until you know that they're okay. 1 minute seems like an eternity. 20 minutes seems like, how do you not know something in 20 minutes? Like, I'm a big put yourself in their shoes. Mm-hmm. What if I asked you something and it took you, let's say, just 10 minutes to figure out? Do you know how long that is? Like if I said, hey, Andrew, something that you should visibly be able to see. Hey, what was the score of the Connecticut game last night? And it took you 10 minutes.
Carry the 2.
I would think something was wrong with you, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine 30 minutes, 35 minutes, 40 minutes.
Right.
That would seem like days, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you hear people say, it was just an hour. I mean, oh, okay. tell that to the folks that are wondering about the health of their team. You know what I mean? So I didn't even really get a chance to finish before everybody had like, that's what I hate about you media, man. It's selfish. You need to know. I'm like, there's nothing about this. Well, really, except to watch Booger struggle was tough, right? Because I was hearkening back to some radio shows where I was like, can you help me get through this? I'm not going to be good, right? Because that's what you want to do. But Susie chipped in and bailed him out. But I'm like, we didn't get a chance to really get into it, right? It's just, what's going on?
Rob on YouTube says the AED literally tells you everything to do. He's an AED first aid and CPR instructor. So, Rob, thanks for tuning into the show.
It does? So, like, are there... I can't... So
it's probably on, like, and mind you, I'm not certified, so I could be completely wrong, but it's probably on, like, the packet when you open up the equipment, right?
That unto itself would take a certain level of...
understanding.
And composure.
Yeah.
Because things are cool, like, when you're practicing, but real life, like, the ability to... Like, it's like catching punts in practice. It's different than being in front of 90,000, right? It's like, oh, this is not the same.
Speaking of not being in front of 90,000, and I was a little disappointed with the turnout for the Creighton women's basketball game last night.
Yeah.
The ladies ended up taking the L, lost by 4 to Providence, 79-75. They entered 16-3 all time against the Friars, and it's obvious offense wasn't an issue in this game at all because this team shot, 50% from downtown, something crazy like that number. And they just couldn't get the stops inside when it mattered most against that team.
Yeah, and it seemed like that was the theme of the night last night on both the men's and women's side. It did not pay to be the higher ranked team. Now, Arkansas kind of staved off trouble, even though
they were down 17 early.
Missouri gave them
that zone defense.
All they wanted.
Goodness.
I mean,
the Razorbacks did not have an answer.
Duke
until
took it on the chin.
The second half.
And I guess technically TCU was ranked higher.
Duke.
Yeah. So
I know you're a UNC guy, so
I am,
you probably
but
have some type of
my producer for the radio network is a huge Duke guy, Andrew Dowdy, and so I don't really want to like rub salt in the wound because it's not like Carolina look like world beaters against Wake Forest.
And Caleb Love, I think he needs to rest up.
So we have these conversations about players you struggle to cheer for even though they play on your team.
Caleb Love's one of them.
That would be Caleb Love for me. That would have been Shaquille O'Neal for the Lakers. That was Jeff Kent and Juan Uribe for the Dodgers, right? That was Neil O'Donnell as a Steeler. So it's like, oh yeah, don't get me started on Neil O'Donnell. Brendan Stye tells an amazing story about the night before the Super Bowl with Neil O'Donnell. I cringed. I'm like, well, I believe it though. I absolutely believe it. Because what you wanted UConn to win? I mean, they ran into a buzzsaw. It was a good night for Providence last night, Sasha.
I thought we had a Vuvuzuela going off in here.
Like, we good?
Can't believe I said that word right.
Hey, was she a Missouri fan? She wasn't cheering for Arkansas.
You know
what
who
happened?
Was a Missouri fan and is a Missouri fan is our guy that we talked to yesterday, Joel Lorenzi, Mizzou alum. He was talking about that game on Twitter. I was watching the Providence UConn game.
Yeah.
And that was fun to watch. How about what a day for Providence. They moved to 13-3 on the season, 5-0 in Big East play for the first time in program history. This win puts them in sole possession of first place in the Big East, DB.
I still think we got a long way to go in this bad boy.
And that was my poll question. I said, put all bias aside, who's the best team in the Big East? And I said, if you think Creighton, because I didn't put them in the poll because it only allowed 4 spots, but I said, spam the like button if you think it's Creighton. Outside of that, though, I put Xavier, Providence, Marquette, UConn. There's 5 teams that could compete for a Big East title right there.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is if you're a Jays fan, are you pumped that you're kind of riding a high heading into Connecticut? Or are you like, oh, shoot, We got a hornet's nest probably waiting for a team that's going to be dialed in, coming off a couple of L's.
Couldn't tell you either way.
Yeah,
I don't know
Saturday.
what side I'd rather lie on. But you're right. Interesting coming. An interesting game coming on Saturday. Also, an interesting person that we're about to talk to next. That's Brandon Vogel on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency on the AM 590 app is where you can find us in Omaha. You can also catch us live on the radio, also 1480 ESPN Lincoln, and live on YouTube, Twitter. Find Coffee and Cream. Join us for the show. We appreciate you and we love having you here. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, and our guest next, Brandon Vogel, who is with us via StreamYard, our first StreamYard guest.
So cool.
It's proper to have a Hail Varsity writer, the managing editor, I should say, as our first guest.
And by far and away, and I know he's going to say this doesn't take a lot of technological savvy, but by far and away of all of us, the guy that can be the most self-sufficient with a computer.
Amen. Amen. And it's probably because he reads a lot. Look at all those books back there, Brandon. Good morning.
B. Vogues, good morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks. When Shane messaged me to say you want to do StreamYard, I was like, sure. I didn't know we'd be breaking new ground. So just honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, you know what? We dug the shovel in, and you're with us.
When you're as smart as our boss is, he often wonders why everybody just doesn't use StreamYard, so you can control what you can control better. But as you know, Bill, and I'm like, not everybody thinks like you. Like, that's why you're successful, and we're
the little people.
How you been, Brandon? It's a lot has been going on in the landscape. Can I start with a little OT? I want to go back to volleyball, just because the way that it ended, it was a little unceremonious. Nebraska was trying to figure it out from a health standpoint. They've had some departures. We've seen this a little, but it wasn't as many scholarship players. And I think it was like 11 or 12. And Coach Cook was kind of going back to the drawing board, refiguring out how he wanted to do coaching. Is this another new stretch, in your opinion, for Coach Cook as he gears up, managing the portal, departures, all while trying to remain successful?
I think it is. And you know, when he and I worked on the book a few years ago, he had already been through a couple of those, you know, moments where he personally would mark it and say, you know, things changed for me, for the sport, for the landscape of college athletics after this moment or that moment. And I think this is another one. You know, looking back at Nebraska, they did a good job of managing all of the roster shuffling that they did throughout the season. And, you know, I kind of came away from that tournament loss thinking, well, it might have caught up to them a little bit. The plan that they went into the season with at setter obviously became much different throughout the season. That's a tough one too. So not only, you know, programs like Nebraska remain kind of destinations when you're in the portal, you still have an upper hand there, but I think that's gonna, you know, it's gonna be harder and harder to maintain that kind of status. So we'll see what happens there. And also just the graduation or players like Maddie Kubik and Nicklin Hames, that alone makes it, I think, kind of a turning of a new leaf as they go to a little bit of a younger generation.
And Brandon, how cool is it to see Maddie Kubik taking her talents to Puerto Rico now?
Yeah, that was, you know, Coach Cook alluded to the fact that she was going to go play professionally. And we've seen plenty of former Huskers go forth and have really long professional careers abroad. I mean, Jordan Larson kind of being the penultimate example. It's not for everybody. You know, some people get a taste of that life and love it and enjoy the chance to bounce around Europe or Asia or wherever they may end up. Some people try it for a little bit, like Kelly Hunter, and kind of find their path towards coaching that way.
But let me transition as we talk football here, and Coach Rule is hit the ground running, obviously, and he's kind of rounded out his staff. And the one thing outside of age that you get that's a reoccurring theme is it's people that he's familiar with. This time around, if you're part of Nebraska's fan base and you remember what happened with the transitioning of the former regime and kind of the his guys concept, what do you think will be or should be different this time around so we can separate the two?
Yeah, good question. I'll say that as the staff has kind of come into full focus at this point, you know, I was a little bit surprised. I think my default setting, and I'm having to revisit this, is that, you know, you expect to see a little bit more change, a little bit more variety, but this, similar to when Frost came from UCF, feels a lot like a trusted group of assistants. And I think that's fine. In terms of the difference between this time and the past time, the big thing for me is just the experience level there. You know, a lot of these guys were with Rule at Temple, and had been, you know, Ed Foley is a very, very experienced coach. A good handful of them went to Baylor. Some of them have been with him just solely at the NFL. So I think there's just a little bit larger sample size versus the last time where Nebraska basically took its entire staff of 2 years at UCF and brought them all to Lincoln.
Brandon, when you see the work that Rule and his staff have done in regards to the transfer portal and recruitment, already within a month's time, a month and a week, whatever we're at now, it's been 30 guys that have already been signed or 7 coming out of the transfer portal, especially. Is that a number in regards to the transfer portal, the 7, that you see continually growing, whether it's this year or even years down the line for Matt Rule? Or do you think that number, once he kind of gets settled in Lincoln, will start to maybe come back a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think ending up at 7 wouldn't be a bad number for your kind of yearly average. Now, I expect them to go up. I do expect them to add some more, you know, in kind of the second window, and we'll see if anything shakes out here in the next, you know, remaining time that this current portal window is open. But I think if things go the way you lay them out, which is never a given in any kind of coaching arena, you rely on that less and less if your development's good, if your scouting is good for high school recruits. So that being said, at Nebraska, a place that we know, I think just based on location and how far, you know, a good portion of that class has to come to live in Lincoln, Nebraska's attrition rate's always going to be high, in my opinion. So if you ended up at 7, if we're 5 years down the road talking about, yeah, they're about 7 or 8 each year, I think that feels about right to me.
BC Brandon talking about feels. I was talking to BC yesterday about numbers. He mentioned getting old and staying old, which was something that the previous staff was trying to do. And I gave him the numbers by class, right? They've only got 13 seniors, but they got 22 juniors, 22 sophomores, 13 redshirt freshmen, but 22 freshmen so far. When you look at the build and those numbers, is that kind of I like kind of the way those numbers look, especially in the junior and sophomore class. Is that the way that you think Nebraska can and should trend, or what am I missing when I look at the bulk of where those players are?
The one that jumps out to me from what you just ran off is, well, that one, and also the 22 juniors. And, you know, I'd have to look back and see, but that feels like a little bit larger junior class. You know, we've seen some years where by the time you're to the season, you're down to 13 seniors, like they are in terms of what's listed on the roster now. Yeah. I think college rosters, just by nature of it, are always going to be kind of front loaded to the underclassmen side of it. If that does tick up, you know, if we start seeing senior classes that are more consistently 15, 16, 17, that's probably a good development. That's probably a good sign about what Nebraska is doing development-wise, because a lot of those things tend to sort themselves out naturally. Like if a guy is super good, he might not make it to his junior or senior year, depending on if he redshirts or not. Those guys that maybe are at too high a level, by the time you get to the junior, senior year, they usually find a way to filter themselves out too.
Brandon, a new name that's emerged, and we're speaking with Brandon Vogel of HailVarsity.com, the managing editor for Hail Varsity. And you can toss him a follow on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel. Brandon, a new name has emerged, a new prospect, you could say, in the portal, and that's offensive lineman Walter Rouse, the Stanford left tackle. He's drawing a lot of interest from schools like Oklahoma, Iowa, Kentucky, and Nebraska. And he's also scheduled visits at places. And according to Josh Edwards, I believe I read that he has one set for Nebraska already. What could a guy like that do for a program right away, seeing that he's already started 39 games at left tackle?
Already started 39 games and did it at Stanford, which, you know, Stanford has not been what they were during the height of David Shaw era, but that's still a program that I associate with really strong line play. So you feel good about the level of, I guess, training he has coming in. Those offensive and defensive linemen are much like just recruiting from high school, are always going to be, this might be different in the portal with the offensive line. Like those guys are gold. Like the competition for experienced offensive linemen is always going to be intense. We've seen it with guys who have come from, the FCS level. A guy Nebraska was in on signing day and missed out on. Like if you've got that experience up front and you're available as quote unquote kind of a ready-made offensive lineman, it's landing those guys becomes super, super valuable, I think, because that's the thing with offensive line. We look at it and it's probably the biggest developmental position there is. Having an opportunity to maybe address some needs right away with a plug and play guy it's kind of like a cheat almost. And I think you're seeing that with how much competition there is for those players.
Brandon, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We will talk again next week.
Nice to be Vogues.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up next, we will continue the conversation of Nebraska football and who I think they need to add in the portal. DB will weigh in, and then we'll talk NFL. That's next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Playing a little catch against that zone out beyond the arc. 13 to shoot. Black's going to try a three, and he buried it. Anthony Black with a line drive three from the right wing. 69-63. Arkansas by 6 with 3 minutes to play in the ball game.
For the senior Oshunigi. Takes a deep breath, collects himself, fires the second free throw, and buries it. 63-60 Iowa State. 5.4 seconds to go.
Make him catch it in the backcourt, then foul.
They do. Tanner Groves has it, dribbles ahead, and he's going to back up and fire a three for the tie. He missed it, and Iowa State wins it 63-60 in regulation.
Iowa State escapes, not so much for the, well, I guess Arkansas could be an escape too, but it wasn't like they were playing a bum team by any means.
Yeah,
Mizzou's
top 25.
A very good basketball team, but it's something that we were kind of talking about right before we entered the segment of, we saw a lot of college basketball upsets yesterday, and it doesn't always pay to be ranked. But at the same time, how much do the rankings actually matter in college basketball?
I think you've got to get about a month in to a good conference slate. Like I'll ask me again around January 15th.
I mean, maybe it gives you a good gauge, but like rankings don't matter at all because
it's very hard.
You don't settle on rankings once you get to March Madness. There's so much fluctuation, and basketball's the sport that even though you are a 1 seed or a 2 seed, a 15 can come in and just knock you out.
And what did we talk about yesterday?
Game of runs. You just get the better team that night.
After even 1 and 2 now are difficult, right? I do like Houston. There's only 4 teams still left in the top 20 offensive and defensive efficiency, and Houston is one of those teams. But I mean, 5 through 25. I didn't. LSU was outside the top 25 the other night, and I watched them play Kentucky. I didn't see a ton of difference between LSU and Kentucky obviously in top 15ish. And the other thing is, got to wait and see a little bit because the game has changed so much with folks in the portal and getting, key players to leave, come and go. The old clash song, should I stay or should I go? Mm-hmm. But there's just so much more balance. I don't know, but we heard Anthony Black hitting the line drive three. Yep. It's the last time you've seen a guy play all 40 minutes. Well, it's probably more recent than I think. Yeah, Anthony Black played all 40 minutes for Arkansas last night. You don't see that a ton in college. No,
you need your best player, though, to come back in a game like that.
I know Jays fans are raising their hands, though, because in the last couple of years, they have seen a couple of guys log 38, 39 minutes. Marcus Zagorowski before. So I did not take a rest yesterday, did Anthony Black, playing for Arkansas.
And as we said, Iowa State escaped Oklahoma late, but 2 spots above them in the rankings, Charleston. I didn't even realize that 25. They were there.
Yeah.
Until last night when I'm like, I'm on only ranked games, and that's all I wanted to see, the scores of the ranked games. And I'm like, Charleston, NCA&T. Why is this team there? 15-1 on the year? Holy cow, they competed too early on against UNC in that loss.
It was, it's funny, because I joked with you being a degenerate with anytime puck scores, but I do have a buddy, he's in my phone as Degenerate Aaron, just because, I mean, he's constantly capping.
Your phone at.
AR-15.
Yes. Oh, okay, good.
I try not to always say that out loud because sometimes people struggle with political correctness. And so I wanted to call you AR-15.
Because we were talking about nicknames.
But then I just went with Drew Down, and I already have AK4 Channel 7.
You called me AR every now and then.
Yeah, with Andy Kendi. So I was like, we can't have.
Don't want to get me mixed up with Andy Kendi.
I don't want any amendment people mad at me. So I kind of chill with that. But it's college. People whine about the product and how good is it. And first it was one and dones, and now it's the portal. And the more I'm around this thing and the longer I'm watching it like occur, I think it's just going to be like this for a while with such freedom of movement. Because where I was going, I was listening to, we're going back and forth on text with one of my buddies last night that he's like, man, I'm on Charleston tonight. I'm on Charleston tonight. And it kind of caught me off guard. I was like, gosh, of all the weird things.
Mm-hmm.
And he texted me right back as he's like, oh gosh, this line stinks, right? It's not, it should be favored by more. It's A&T. And I'm like, first of all, who's capping like this? Number one, but I mean, it is what it is. It wasn't Aaron, by the way. It was somebody else. And it turns out they didn't cover. And I just was like, who is elbow deep?
I haven't even gotten really into college basketball in regards to betting yet this year because I'm still having a tough time reading what teams are outside of the teams that we talk about every day. And you know me, I don't like betting on those teams because I don't want to be.
Right. You rather have anytime goal scorers.
Right. 100%. 100%. No, I just don't like betting on teams that we got to talk about.
Yeah.
You know,
don't want to bet with your heart.
This segment is kind of colliding with a bunch of different topics. College basketball. We'll move into NFL here in a moment, and then we'll talk a little Jim Harbaugh as well. But speaking of collisions, Dingman's Collision Center is one of the best places to take your car if you're in need of auto repair. They've been in the business for over 25 years in Omaha. Family-owned, family-run, local business. They invest in the latest technology to stay up to date with the ever-evolving technology. We're dinging in the new year with Dingman's Collision Center. They work on all makes and models from Fords to Teslas, which I looked up the other day, the work that they do on Teslas, and they're like one of the only spots in town that take care of Teslas. So if you have a Tesla, which I know DB drives a Tesla every day.
Better than a Tesla. You know why Shane is so curious to use that ding for Dingman's? Ding. He thinks Darcy Dingman, who's runs kind of their marketing, and she's the guru, is like the nicest person in the world. She was so nice to Shane that we had to hear about Darcy for, I don't know, Shane, a couple of months. Oh, come on, Shane. But yeah, great.
That's him peeling into the parking lot to talk to Darcy.
So you get your ding game right, Shane. Ding, I won't judge you.
Oh, man. They have 4 locations throughout the metro area, along with the standalone mechanical shop at 120th and Maple. They've been voted first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running. If you need to take your car somewhere, take it to Dingman's Collision Center.
18 seems like a lot.
Well, I'm 25, so that helps at all.
Wow. Stop reminding me.
Hey, I'm 25 in like, 11 months?
Oh, you're that guy?
No, my birthday's coming up.
You're February?
It's less than a month away.
Are you February?
February 4th.
My sister's February 5th.
I think we
talked about that because you have some very Aquarius-like personality traits that you share.
Yeah.
She is sarcastic.
Only good-looking people are Aquarius.
She's extremely sarcastic. Very much so. Everything's
we'll get along perfectly.
Everything's a joke.
Let's transition here to the NFL playoff picture going into Week 18 because as I sat back last night and thought about Week 18 of the NFL, at least in recent years, it's the week to sit your guys, keep them rested for the playoffs. But this year, DB, it seems as if Week 18 matters more than it has in the past.
Yeah,
people need to play in order to secure a good spot in the playoffs or even the bye.
No, I completely listen. This is Shane. I'm not going to throw you a bone just because I like you. This will be the first week that I will openly be cheering for the Detroit Lions. I mean, how many eyeballs is that Detroit Green Bay game going to get?
So
go ahead.
You've never cheered for him?
I mean, not open. No,
I just don't think.
I'm a Steelers guy. And the NFL isn't a thing where I have multiple teams. I love the Steelers, and I'm interested in Carolina because that was the team that gave me my first shot.
Is there anybody hotter than the Packers right now?
No, and it's kind of what A-Rod does.
Yes, but remember, just like 5 weeks ago, we were talking about if Jordan Love needs to take over.
Is there a rivalry there at all between Pittsburgh and Detroit?
Would you stop?
No, seriously. I mean, because Detroit hasn't been anything forever.
Unless they're mad that we won a Super Bowl in their city. I don't know. Jump.
Yes.
I don't know if you heard that narrative, that story, but the bus was coming back to play for a Super Bowl championship in his hometown. I had never heard that story before. But anyway, yeah, the NFL, it's a great week. I'm curious, and I know you have to be, if they're going to bump the bye leading up to the Super Bowl, or so Cincinnati and Buffalo are going to play after week 18. How about that in a standalone game that's going to have a ton of impact
on the AFC, especially because you're looking at a Bengals team that's still fighting for the division. And then you're looking at a Bills team that's looking at the bye, because remember, back in week 5, I think it was week 5, the Bills beat the Chiefs 24-20. And think about how much weight that win carries now for the Buffalo Bills, having them be well rested and carry through with home field advantage. But
Seattle has the tiebreak over Detroit, though, right? If it comes down to it, head to head,
they need a Seattle loss. Yes, because Detroit needs a win and. Well, yeah,
Seattle
loss. And Seattle needs a Green Bay loss to get in.
And are we playing for? Is anybody playing for the Jim Harbaugh sweepstakes?
Do you ever?
I
do you ever?
I care.
Do you ever cheer for a team because there's a former player on there that you played with, or a former Nebraska guy, or a Nebraska guy on there? You know, because Detroit had a bunch.
More individual.
More individual.
Yeah, more individual. Like, I wanted Uyghur to be all pro. I obviously wanted LP to go bananas. I was very upset with Amir Abdullah when he caught the third down pass against the Steelers, because the Steelers needed a key stop. But I cheer for Amir, right?
Right.
I cheer. Yeah, Levante, all those guys. I want individually. I want them to go.
Okay. 100%.
I used to say to Grant Wistrom, "Why do you keep sacking my quarterback? Like, lighten up."
If there's
you Seahawk,
we talked about teams that we don't normally cheer for, but if there's a team that you could cheer for in week 18 to make the playoffs, would you say it's the Lions for you? Because it's the Lions for me, and I'm an
that
NFC
I don't
North.
normally cheer for.
Yes.
Because believe me, I'm hypothesizing about what the Steelers need to get in, starting with a win.
Right. Because I'm an NFC North guy, but I would love to see the Packers lose and the Lions finally get back there.
Is there a team that I don't? Okay. It would be between Seattle and Detroit, because I'm a Pete Carroll guy.
Okay.
I love Pete Carroll. But the better story would be Detroit, obviously, and Dan Campbell, because he's quirky and off the and kind of off the cuff and shoot, I think that maybe puts him in the Coach of the Year discussions. But I do think, and I was talking about this with Warren. I wasn't talking with him. We were just on Twitter, but Dable's his guy for Coach of the Year. And I said, if not Dable, then probably Shanahan. I'm sure Campbell will get some votes. And are we overlooking Nick Sirianni?
I don't think so.
But I like Shanahan significantly more than I do Sirianni in this discussion. But I still think Dable's the guy.
Yes. Okay.
Don't let me convince you.
I like Shanahan most
as your favorite,
as
just because of what they've been.
Just because of what they've been able to put on the field with Mr. Irrelevant as your quarterback.
And not even that. That offense was
that he runs. Oh my goodness! It's fascinating to watch 49ers games on TV, because you just never know what play they're going to run. And they're doing a lot of stuff without top talent.
Or who's going to hurt you. So, I mean, but the Giants, though, like and this was trending.
What do you think of those comments about doing a snow angel
I'm okay.
Because I saw a lot of people like critiquing him for how he handled that. And I'm like, I didn't really find anything like crazy with it.
So two things can be true at once.
I mean, it's not mature, like it's very immature. But
two things can be true at once. I didn't have any problems with the snow angel, because I truly don't think he knew that Foles was hurt. I don't think he looked over at him. I don't think he's like, is this guy going to get up? I think he was on the ground and he did the snow angels. Now, the tone in which he said what he said about not knowing Jeff Saturday, I was like, okay, I could see where that would rub people the wrong way. But I certainly am not going to think a 22-year-old knows who Jeff Saturday is, who retired when – I mean, how old was Kayvon Thibodeau? So Saturday retired 12 years ago?
Yeah, but I mean,
how old Thibodeau was in elementary?
Yeah, I would still think that he's heard of the guy, Jeff Saturday. I mean, outside of the fact, like maybe you didn't watch him play, but come on, this is a guy that got hired out of nowhere. You didn't just miss that headline.
I don't know.
You're talking about a guy that plays the game. Everybody knows what goes on in the NFL if you're in the NFL.
I'm not mad at him for not knowing.
No, I'm
he's
not
a
either.
kid.
But at the same time,
he's not a kid. He's a young man.
He knows who Jeff Saturday
I don't think he does.
He knows.
So
did you?
So the reason I'm kind of passionate about this, because I followed this whole Kayvon Thibodeau thing coming out since he left Oregon, and how his stock wasn't as high because he had other interests and he didn't talk the way that, some NFL execs wanted him to talk.
Talented.
And he was kind of his own guy. I think that's who, knowing his personality, how he comes off since Oregon, it doesn't surprise me one bit that he doesn't know Jeff
in the
Saturday.
locker room. Saquon Barkley walked up to him and goes, "Can you believe the Colts just hired a guy that's been an analyst and only coached high school?"
I'm telling you, those locker rooms. Listen, Drew Down. Those guys don't give a rat's rear end. They don't. In those locker rooms, nobody cares about what's going on other than in that locker room. I'm telling you. Now, maybe it's different from me because we didn't have the immediacy of news. Like those guys now will sit down in their cell phones post-interview, right? They're, checking IG or whatever it is that they do. So maybe it's different now, but I don't think those guys care.
In game prep for the matchup. You don't think that at any point Dable said, "Hey, Saturday's offense looks like this"?
No, they don't use names in the NFL. They use numbers. At least my experience, like number 56, or hey, we got to know where 13 is, or you know what I mean? They don't. I'm not mad at. I'm not mad
either.
I just do I love his personality?
At his age, like maybe he was like, I'll tell a little white lie. I don't know who he is. Maybe he's just stirring the pot.
Hey, we cover this sport for a living, right? Mm-hmm. Who's the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Doug Peterson.
Who is the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings?
Kevin O'Connell. Thank you.
Who is the head coach of the Cleveland Browns?
Stefanski.
Point is, you have to kind of go there, and it's what we do, right? I did this exercise once with managers in Major League Baseball. I think I missed like 6, and I love baseball. Now, if I played that sport, would it be different? Fudge, I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just hard.
Hey, speaking of coaches, how about Jim Harbaugh's name being tossed around?
I can't wait to talk to Parker
Gabriel
about
next.
that.
Yeah,
but if that's not the job that I would take, of the potential job openings,
you know what? I'm on this. I would love to hear your point because I wouldn't take the Denver job either. I think he would work better in a different spot.
Yeah, I don't think he wants to be hamstrung with a quarterback. I don't think he's going to love that salary cap situation.
You know who I think he would love to coach for? The Indianapolis Colts. And the reason for that
they're the best franchise available, I think. But I need to get inside Carolina
the Ring of Honor,
again.
for one. But 2, the Colts actually have a first-round pick in the top 5 to where they could get a quarterback, and now he can mold that quarterback.
They can run the football. He's getting a good offensive line.
I don't think he wants to handle the out of his prime Russell Wilson.
No, I don't think that's the best job. You could talk me into Carolina though. Although
interesting, also because they have a top 10 pick.
And here's the thing about Carolina, though, with that ownership group is going to have to manage. Just talking to people down there, obviously got a couple close buddies that are close to that organization. There's a genuine relational tie with Wilkes in that community. I think Charlotte has embraced him as a person, as a coach. I think the locker room has embraced Coach Wilkes. And listen, you're already kind of plugging guys in for the job, and say what you want about the Rooney Rule or not, but I think those guys typically know who they want to go get. But I do think Carolina's in an interesting spot because if you look at a team like Shane's Raiders, I wonder if you gave them some true serum, would they have stayed with what they did at the interim last year on the run that he went before they went and got Josh McDaniel? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's better to stand down. So that one will be interesting because I think that's a good franchise.
Put a little frosting on the cake.
Do you think it's the end of Cliff Kingsbury?
Well, it should be. But remember, and I don't know how the contract reads, he and Keim both got extensions. Mm-hmm. And I think through 2028. Now, they appear to be a family unlike, Shane, Davis, that can pay for his coach to leave. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if they want to do that.
I don't think he leaves.
But listen, he's got to go. You and I debated this before. You're team CK. I'm not.
Isn't it KK?
Is it Cliff with a K?
I think it's Cliff with
I
a
try
K.
not to say KK a ton unless it's Kevin Kevin Kugler.
I
even call him K2.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So so childish we are. I don't know. Shane, do we have time to get to these two, or do we need to take a break?
I don't even recognize what we're doing.
We can maybe do
it quick.
Let's do it quick. We'll go to line one. Michigan Lance is on line one with us. He's been waiting a long time.
So he's got to go. And he's got to go quick.
We got to go quick here. We only have
Lance,
about
you got 2 minutes.
Hey, what's up, fellas?
What's up?
Hey, man.
Hi, buddy.
Harbaugh, man, I don't know what's going on, but again, it still seems like it's coming from other people rather than him. But I would say, man, if he goes, I got no problem with that. He did what he was supposed to do, compete for championships, win the Big Ten championship. And I think Ward Manuel, man, I think he's a guy where he's confident in what he's doing. He has a plan, and I think he always got somebody ready to go because he knows how Harbaugh is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just never know. Because he said, I think I'm going to stay in Michigan, but that doesn't really make me feel good if I'm in that Michigan fan base, locker room, etc.
Hey, do you appreciate a good waffler? Because I don't know. It would get old to me.
No, most definitely. And I'm not – I don't think Ward Manuel appreciates it either. So, but I think he's also like, you know what, man, do what you do. I'm not going to fold. I'm not going to change. And so do whatever you need to do. But I think sooner or later it's going to have to come to a head, DB. You're right. Like, and I think Ward Manuel will bring it to the head. So that's why it's kind of like I don't really know what's going on. But I think Ward Manuel's in control and always in control because he's an alpha male, man. And so is Harbaugh. And everybody doesn't like to work with people that help each other out that makes them better when they're an alpha male and they don't know for sure. Like DB always says, hey, man, be comfortable not always being the smartest in the room. And I don't know if Harbaugh is comfortable with that.
And Manuel has presence. There was an open booth next to our radio booth in Ann Arbor, and he just had a couple of people with him. And so he sat there for a while, even though it wasn't his box. It was just an open booth. He looks and acts like a guy that is in control. He has what I call presence.
Brian, sorry we couldn't get to you, but unfortunately we have to get to Parker Gabriel next. He covers the Denver Broncos for the Denver Post. We have a lot to talk about with him, including Jim Harbaugh. We'll continue that conversation. Russell Wilson. And you know what? We'll go down the stretch of the NFL too. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
There's a winner, there's a non-winner, but winner was football. It was a great game by them, and I'm really proud of our guys.
Back with you, Coffee and Cream this morning on Hail Varsity Radio, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. I'm Andrew Rogers alongside Damon Benning, Shane Schillerberg, and Sasha Durkin helping us out on social media in the room. We appreciate you joining us and love having you here. If you want to get involved on the show, 888-638-4876. You can shoot us a message on Twitter. He's at Damon Benning. I'm at Andrew Rogers TV. Or you can join us live on YouTube. Leave a comment, and we'll touch on that if we have time. But I want to make time right now for our guy, Parker Gabriel. He covers the Denver Broncos for the Denver Post. He's somebody that has ties back to Lincoln, and DB couldn't be more excited to have him on the show. Parker, good morning. Happy New Year.
Yeah, good morning, guys.
PG, how are you, my friend?
Is that Damon Benning I hear?
Something like that.
Hey, listen, and I was given the backstory to Drew Down. I told him, because in my former life, I remember saying, I have got to get that guy. This was kind of when you first got here, but, you could just kind of, whatever, talents were oozing, right? And I was like, hey, man, I think I'm really like this guy. And I couldn't have been happier because some guys don't always land on their feet or do what they want to do. You got to do something on your own terms, and you're still flourishing, man. Is it rough being good at your job, or like, how does that work? Because we clearly wouldn't know.
No, you guys would know. It's rough jumping into a situation mid-season and then covering a coaching search, which actually, funny enough, basically did in 2017 as well.
You knew all about that, though. That one was easy because they got their guy. This one is complicated, PG.
It is, yeah, and they've got, there's a lot of layers to this one, which we can get into. New ownership, a quarterback that you're paying $40 million a year, all kinds of stuff going on. So it's an interesting one already. It will continue to be, but no, I'm just happy to hear your voice. I have to say, Shane called and I was like, what the heck? They told me 7:30 and it's 7:28.
Oh yeah. So here's the difference, PG. It is a very hard clock. So we don't have near the freedom. So we actually have to be responsible. It kind of sucks.
But structure is good.
That's funny. That is so funny, Parker. But let me ask you, because it is a little complicated. A year ago, Denver was a quarterback away. 10 months removed, this is going to be a difficult job because of all that comes with it. How did that happen, PG?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it has to do with the way that Russell Wilson played this year. I mean, if he had played like he played most of his tenure in Seattle, the Broncos may not be in this position after 15 games of Nathaniel Hackett coaching. Now, I think it was going to be rougher than people thought it was going to be. That's pretty easy to tell now because it was a really young coaching staff. Probably, everybody would do things a little bit differently in certain situations. I think Nathaniel Hackett would probably put his staff together differently. They got buried by injuries early in the season. The list just sort of goes on and on and on. This all may sound familiar to folks in Nebraska. It's never one thing. As much as it's, you want to sit here and make it black and white. Well, Russell Wilson played bad, and so, the coach got fired and everything's terrible. That's obviously a big factor when you got $161 million guaranteed up to $245 million, but it's not the only one. So it is going to be a tough job, but at the same time, they have a decent roster. And if Wilson plays better in his second year in new circumstances, the turnaround potential is there too, and that's what they're banking on. I mean, Greg Penner, part of the new ownership group, and the CEO said when they fired Hackett that they don't expect this to be a rebuild. They expect to compete next year.
You talk about year two, and you hope it's better. Because at this point, you're spending a lot of money for 4 wins, and you don't want to be doing that for years down the road. But, I want to ask you this because I don't want to put all the blame on Russell Wilson. Do you think coaching had a lot to do with the poor Broncos play that we saw this year, outside of the fact that maybe Russell Wilson wasn't the same quarterback that we saw in Seattle?
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, think about it this way: they had a coach who's a head coach for the first time, And not only that, but he took on play calling duties for the first time in 4 years in his own career. They had a first-time offensive coordinator who'd never been a coordinator before, 7 years removed from coaching in high school. They had a first-time defensive coordinator, and they had a special teams coordinator who'd been a special teams coordinator one time in 2011 and had been an assistant most of his career. So they put a lot of people in first-time situations, and they hit on the rate that maybe you would expect would happen in that situation. Their defensive coordinator, Jairo Evero, is really good. I mean, he'll be a head coach. The other guys struggled to some degree, especially Hackett and Dwayne Stukes, their special teams coordinator. Special teams have been bad all year. So, yeah, I mean, I think experience and coaching and trying to smash so much new into such a short amount of time definitely had played a role. Maybe it would have gotten better. Just didn't see enough signs of that over the course of the year for the ownership group to feel like, hey, you know what, we can ride this out, and it will look a lot different next year.
Parker, when you're taking a look at the landscape of the NFL as a whole, you knew this covering college football as long as you did. It's such a quarterback-driven league.
Yeah.
Are you more or less convinced that at the level that you're seeing now, when you watch these teams, that it is still a quarterback-driven league?
Well, it's a quarterback-driven league, I think 100%. But I also, it's a money-driven league too, and so you have to have the right combination. Part of the look at the quarterbacks now. I mean, if you're gonna pay a guy, $250 million, $400 million, you're gonna have to have a really, really good young roster that's cheap around the quarterback. You're gonna have to have a guy that's playing at the level of a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes, or you need, sort of a combination of those things. One of the hardest things to do in the NFL is to win when you're paying a quarterback far above what his production level is. And the thing for Denver right now is, they've already paid Russell Wilson a $50 million signing bonus and all of this, but his cap number is actually pretty manageable next year and in 2024. It's after that.
It's 21% or something like that.
Yeah, in 25, and so that's the thing. That's sort of not that they couldn't make a move for that. I mean, if he plays poorly next year, they may feel like they have. But the real thing is work roster-wise years with him, without him at an elite performance, and so you need some combination. Your quarterback has to reflect level of play, or you have a little chance to be competitive.
Parker, we got about a minute and a half here, and before I let you go, I want you to touch on Jim Harbaugh for me, because odds makers have him at plus 720 to be the next coach of the Denver Broncos. Do you see that actually happening? I don't know. I just read that.
Well, I think it's possible. It's going to come down to whether Harbaugh wants the NFL, and he did it last year and then walked away from it. The top end of NFL money can be competitive, or on the top end of the crazy money in college football, even in this day and age. So he checks a lot of the boxes of what the Broncos say they're looking for. He's won in the NFL. He's had success at the highest level. He's a strong personality. Obviously, he's got leadership capabilities. He's got a good eye for hiring staff. So that's why it all lines up. Whether he'll actually go for it, whether other teams will compete for him too. But the thing about Harbaugh is he just costs money. Capital. Most NFL head coaches under contract. He'll go the coordinator. And that leaves a guy like
Parker, you're the man. We appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much.
We'll do this again, Parker. Appreciate you.
That was Parker Gabriel. And coming up next, we have Brian Edwards. So a great segue from the betting conversation and the question I just had.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
And we are back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Our final segment before we let you go. But remember, we are always on podcast later on, and go to Hurrdat Sports, find Morning Dump, and boom, you can catch us for that extra hour. But for now, let's go to Brian Edwards. He's on the phone.
B, have you missed me, man? I have missed you. How are things?
I have, Damon. Good to hear your voice. Happy New Year. All right.
Oh,
man, I was going to give you a fresh, sparky intro, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to do it anymore.
Nobody was more excited and can actually understand this than me and Shane. It's like, hey, We've got to, as we're kind of building this thing, it's like, we've got to get my guy back. You've been a day oneer, man. I've actually missed you. It's kind of weird.
I know it's been weird. I've talked to you guys every Thursday for at least a decade.
Yep.
How many months has it been now that I haven't?
It's since September, man. I was going through withdrawals.
Feels like forever.
Yeah.
Longest time we haven't heard from each other in a while.
Let's get right to it, because I think you're tugging at my heartstrings here, sentimental. Let's talk Steelers. And the team that I hate more than any other team in the NFL, not named the Dallas Cowboys, the Cleveland Browns, in a must-win if we want to have a chance. Get 2.5. What do we like here, B?
Yeah, I figured you'd like this one. So Pittsburgh needs Miami to lose at home to the Jets and New England to lose at Buffalo. But even if those things aren't materializing, it's not like Pittsburgh's going to pull their starters. Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season in his storied tenure. And the Steelers are playing well. They've won 3 in a row and 5 of 6, both straight up and against the spread. The Browns have been eliminated. The Steelers are motivated. I like the Steelers at home laying a short number.
Brian, as we look at a lot of these games going into Week 18, I was talking to DB earlier on in the show, and, in the past, Week 18 really hasn't mattered, and it's kind of hard to predict things when games don't matter. You don't know who's playing, who's going to be sitting, but this is kind of a weird year to where there's so many variables in regards to playoff implications that you're going to see a lot of teams that are on the brink playing their starters and having to play their starters in order to either get into the playoffs or get a better spot in the playoffs. Another one of those teams after, the postponement that we saw earlier this week for tragic reasons was the Bengals, and they're fighting for a division title against the Ravens, a team that has been without Lamar Jackson for 30 plus days. They're laying 7 right now. Do you like that?
Yeah, I do, and I've been betting the Bengals, every game for several months, and they're on fire. I mean, they've won 7 in a row, but straight up and against the spread since week 3. They're 11-2 straight up and 12-1 against the spread. Lamar Jackson didn't practice yesterday. 13th straight practice he's missed. It seems highly likely that he will not play again this week, and Baltimore has lost 2 of 3, mired in a 2-5 against the spread slump. I know the Bengals went through a lot, mentally and emotionally the other night, but from a physical standpoint, it was almost like a bye week. Not the wear and tear on your body, which always matters this time of year. So I think they should be fresh, and I think I would have been on the Bengals in this spot, regardless. So I will be on them -7. Yeah.
Hey, how much was the fact that Harbaugh was so indifferent at the presser? Hey, I'm just going to focus on. I was like, ooh, that didn't sound great. Maybe that's just a professional in him, but he seemed to be very dismissive of the Lamar Jackson situation.
Yeah, and I don't know if that is frustration, perhaps with Lamar. I wouldn't think so, or if it's just, I don't want to talk about it with you media guys. We're hoping he's going to be ready for the playoffs and quit bugging me about this. I would assume it was the latter, just about wanting to deal with the media on it. But, it's definitely a question mark if he's going to even be ready for the playoffs.
All right, your Falcons, Shane Schiller, or actually Sasha Durkin's Tampa Bay, Tom Brady Bucks. He's crossed over from the. No, I'm kidding. You like a total here. It doesn't seem like a ton, but Brady says we're playing. We need the rhythm. They're still the second most efficient passing offense in the NFL. That's crazy to say out loud. Just 40.5 though.
Yeah. So the under's cashed in 5 straight for Atlanta and is 7-1 in the Falcons' last 8. They're number 31 in the NFL in passing yards. They've been held to 18 points or fewer in 7 of their last 10. The under's 11-5 overall for Tampa Bay. They're 24th in scoring, averaging only 18.5 points per game. They met in Tampa early in the year, 21-15 for 36 combined. I don't think Brady's going to play the whole game. And so then it'll be Gabbert, who I consider a shaky backup, or Kyle Trask getting his first career snap. But regardless of what it is, I think we'll be seeing a low-scoring game.
Blaine Gabbert, product of Parkway West High School in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm with a St. Louis guy, B, but I'm managing.
Hey, Brian, a game that everybody's looking forward to is Monday.
Yeah.
And it's the national championship game. TCU is a pretty big dog to a Georgia team that allowed a lot of points to Ohio State, a game that probably people didn't think was going to be as high scoring, let alone as close as it was. But Ohio State almost had a chance to really take that one from Georgia. Seeing that TCU is a 13-point dog and the way that Max Duggan is playing, not only that, but the way that offensively, TCU was able to handle one of the best defenses in college football in Michigan. Do you see a carryover effect into the national championship game? And, is 13 points too much?
I think it is. I grabbed a little bit right when it came out. I bought the half point to 14, but then I grabbed some more at 13 a couple of days ago. A lot of books are at 12.5. So if you can get 13 and you like TCU, I'd go ahead and get it now. Little worried Kendre Miller might not be able to go or might not be 100%, but the backup running back, DeMarcado, was great against Michigan, 150 rushing yards, 1 touchdown on just 17 carries. Duggan's been great all year. Did have a couple of picks last week, but 30-4 TD-INT ratio in the first 13 games. And Georgia's defense has not looked that great the last 2 games. And I think TCU's speed and skill players are equal to Ohio State. And I think Quentin Johnson is probably the best receiver in the country. It doesn't hurt that Darnell Washington, a really good tight end, is probably going to be out for Georgia. They're starting offensive tackle Warren McClendon's really iffy. I like TCU catching the points, but I also like the over. I got it at 63. The over is 8-5 overall for TCU, but one of the unders had 69 combined. The Horned Frogs average 40.3 points per game. Georgia averages 39.2, and their last 2 combined scores have been 80 and 83.
BC, or B. Edwards, you never, ever, ever, ever disappoint, man. And I just like the friendly voice. I was telling Drew down some of our excursions in Vegas. And just one of the all-around good guys, man.
He's your guy, and Patrick Everson is my guy in Vegas that I always hang with. Do you know Patrick Everson?
He's working with Vegas Insider now. We've yet to meet face-to-face, but I've been familiar with his work for a decade or so.
Hey, you two would be like 2 peas in a pod. And let alone, do you guys talk the same? And, think the same, but you kind of look the same.
B. Edwards is the man.
Well, yeah, I look forward to meeting him, hopefully during March Madness. But he just got Vegas Insider picked him up probably, I want to say right at the start of football season, 4 or 5 months ago. Right. So I'm sure I'll meet him soon.
Hey, you're the man, B. Appreciate you.
All right, fellas. Thanks. I'll talk to you guys soon.
For sure. Brian Edwards, Vegas B. Edwards on Twitter.
Yeah. So funny. Was this on the dump or the show yesterday where I was talking about De La Boutiere from Minnesota being the D-line coach at Akron?
That's a good question.
So I was talking about the young guys, right? He is just this morning named the defensive line coach at Minnesota because, Minnesota's had a little bit of an exodus, right? D-line coach goes, co-DC goes. Got a message from Coach Collins yesterday saying a little change was arise from Minnesota because they're obviously recruiting in our household, but he's just 24 years old coming over from Akron.
Wow.
Arbuckle is at Western Kentucky. He's 26. Brandon Bailey's 28 at Buffalo. Bell at Akron again is 27. Aaron Bowl,
the young kid
at Wyoming, is 28.
New kids on the block.
Chad Bowden is the director of recruiting. He's 26.
Look at your notes page over here.
Because
you could flip through.
So because I like to know, I always need a frame of reference when we're discussing things like age, and it's like, you know what? There's a lot going on in college football where folks have gotten young in a hurry, and I almost didn't bat an eye at Coach Rule's hire. Now we'll see if all that glitters is gold, but the Big Ten Conference getting young,
like I told you,
in a hurry.
Like I told you, young coaches, young kids, like they can be some of the smartest people in the room. And whether you're going for like a new approach or you're looking at somebody that's hungry,
fresh set of eyes,
I think it's more like don't look at talent based on age and experience. The most talented person in the room may be the youngest guy in the room.
Or is that ominous foreshadowing?
Are you looking into that? You're looking deep into that? Hey, if you want to see a lot of our
it's your world. I'm just living in it.
If you want to see our back and forth live, come to Breakfast with Benning at Hale Varsity Club tomorrow. Go to halevarsityclub.com to reserve your spot, purchase a ticket, and have some fun with us. We'll see you then.